That brings us to the speaker of today, Sara Hamlin. Representing today Ignite Sweden, but Sara have a long experience within both the startup ecosystem, running a startup, starting a startup, but working also in large corporations in innovation, driving an accelerator program, managing that, and now pairing startups with large corporations, where you are head of corporate relations, right?
Right,
that's right.
What an introduction, thank you.
Sara, the stage is yours, please.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. So our mission is to get more business for the startups. That is why we exist. We could see that in the innovation system, it was hard for startups to actually get their first customer in Sweden. So when they were scaling, they actually went abroad to get customers. And that meant that all the people they were hiring also were from abroad. So that means it was hard to actually take them for Sweden as a country to actually be part of the scaling. So that is our mission, to get them to be able to scale in Sweden, to get customers for them here. It also was an issue for Sweden as a country that large corporates wasn't able to access new technology and talent as fast as they wanted. So that means that in the long run, maybe the large corporate also was losing their big, strong possibilities. And that was not good for Sweden as a country. So our goal is to get them together. For the large corporate, that means that we give them a lot of best practice, how to work with startups, how to access new technology, how to implement it in their organization. So we deep dive in their needs and what they're looking for and how they want to see their future. And for the startups, we want them to be able to do business with large organizations, which means that we teach them how large organization works, how to do B2B sales, how they can get legal support, they can navigate in a large organization. But the main thing is, of course, to open doors for them to get the customers. So from the end of last year, we started to work with also public organizations, because we can also see that it was hard for the startups to get access to them. And they had to learn also how to work with more innovative and small organizations. So we have a good process for that also. So startup now dare to actually approach public organizations also, which was a problem before. So up to now, we have helped over 761 startups to actually get meetings with potential customers. The goal is, of course, to help Swedish large organizations and Swedish startups. That is our main purpose. But we can also see that the next step for the startups is, of course, to get customers also abroad. So now we work with 10 countries. I will talk a little bit more later on which countries we work with. We arrange different kinds of match days, which means that with different topics, large organizations and startups meet up. And up to date, it's over 4,000 meetings. We also measure everything to see how was the match, how was the meetings, what happens after them. And we can see we have a 50% following up rate. And this means that 50% of the meeting actually lead to further dialogue. Once a year, we measure how many commercial collaborations there are. And that is when we open the champagne, of course, when there's a deal between the large and the small one. So last year's measurements was 235 commercial deals. But in November, we will do new measurements. We hope that number is getting bigger and bigger every day, but we know it will. I will explain a little bit about the process that we work with. One of the key things is, of course, to find the right person within the large organization, one that have a mandate, one that have a budget, one that can actually do something with a startup and actually wants to do that. So that is the first thing that we do when we work with a large organization. And then we deep dive in who they are, what they're looking for, and we try to identify them the strategic innovation areas that are crucial for them. Usually it's within 3 to 5 years, because we can see that that's the best match with startups that can solve the areas that they want. But of course, it can be here and now, and it can be either longer in the future. But we see that 3 to 5 years is perfect for working with startups. What we do then is we scout startups specifically for the needs that the large organization have. And then we give them a long list. For example, if they have a chance to have 7 meetings, we give them a list of maybe 10 to 15 startups. We go through them together and explain why we do the match, how we were thinking. And then we do a selection together of who they will meet. So when they go into the meeting, of course, they know why they were matched with that startup and who the startup is. We have a tool, which is called Ignite Magic, or a database where they can read about the startups and everything, and the schedule of the meeting and everything is in the database. And we also prepare the startups. Who are they going to meet at the large organization? Why are they matched? What kind of need are they matched to? So when they go into the meeting, it's only a 20 minutes meeting. We have actually tried different kinds of time slots and different kinds of setup of the meeting, but we find that the 20 minutes is the most efficient way of meeting the first time. So they go into the meeting, both of them, and know why they are matched. We also have a structure of the meeting that we supply both the startup and the corporate with, so it will be efficient. In the end of the meeting, the goal is to know if they want to meet up and deep dive in the technology, which is not, maybe they don't have time to do that in the 20 minutes. So in the end, they should know, should we meet again or not? So it's very efficient then. And of course, the goal is to have some kind of collaboration. It usually starts with a pilot to test out what can you do together, and what you want to measure. And so you do after that an evaluation. And of course, the goal is to scale together in the long run. We can see that the whole process here takes about 6 to 9 months, because it's a lot of things to do and to get the key result. As I said, we work in different areas. In the database, we have over 1,800 startups within different technologies and different sectors. We can see that this is the top 6. It is also, as we started out working with only B2B, only corporates. But now when we start working also with the public sector, we can see that it's shifting, because it's different kinds of startups. Now it's a lot of things that needs to be solved for the people in the city, for example. So now we can see from the last year that this, I think if I show you this slide in 1 year, it will be different, as we're working both with corporates and the public sector now. This is a slide for the corporates, more or less, that we want them to not invest, to be a customer. We want them also to see that the potential outside their own organization is bigger than within, because they cannot have all of the expertise and knowledge within the organization. So always look outside before developing yourself. It will go faster for you. And of course, I mean, as we have worked a lot with the different kinds of sectors and different kinds of corporates, we also have a lot of experience how to remove the obstacles. So we will also help corporates with this, because they could be procurement or IT or legal stuff, which is a lot usually the case in large organizations. And we want them also to be faster. So catch them fast is a good thing. And we, as I said before, usually start with a pilot. So experiment together before going to full deal is preferred. And also it should always be a business case for both sides. It should be beneficial for both. So it should not be that you do this to be nice to a startup or something. This should be, it's business for both sides. So that's really important. Yeah, and of course, celebrate everything and learn from each other. Even if the pilot or what you do together wasn't a big success, then you learn from that and use that in the next experiment to do. One of the big events we will have in January is Sweden Innovation Days. And we organized this, so it's a 4-day event. And we organized this together. It's financed by Vinnova and the Swedish Energy Agency, mostly by Vinnova. And it's arranged then by us and AI Sweden. But we cannot do this alone. It's a really large event. So what we have done, I mean, is 10 countries. So as you can see, it's from all over the world, from different time zones and different cultures. This is the countries identified by Vinnova, which is really interesting, both export and import for Sweden as a country. So that is why we focus on them, because it's benefit both for corporates and for startups, and Sweden as a country. So what we do is that we work with both startups and corporates within all of these countries, but we can't do that ourselves. So we have partners for each country, both Swedish partners that help us and international partners. This is for scouting both corporates and startups. And as you can see on the next slides, we have a very familiar logo of Ideon. So this is where we are partners with Ideon. Our plan for Sweden Innovation Day, which is the second time we do it. We did it last year, in the end of last year also. The idea is to have over 500 meetings during these 4 days. So it will be in total 90 corporates participating. 45 will be Swedish and 45 will be international. It will be over, I think it will actually be over 200 or 300 startups from all of these countries meeting these corporates. And the setup is the same as I explained before. It will be 20 minutes meeting also for each one meeting. So that will be really super interesting to, and as we did it last year, we can see that the result has been very good from that. The focus last time was AI. The focus this time will be the global goals. And of course, that is very broad, as you all are aware of. So what we do now, we haven't started scouting startup yet. What we do now in October, we are doing need assessments with all the corporates. So when in the end of October, when we have all the needs and all the problems identified from the corporate side, we will start the scouting, and then we know which goals we will focus on and which solutions. I mean, we will do the matchmaking for Sweden Innovation Day, but there's always also a conference in parallel. So each of the 4 days have a theme. So if you want to sign up for the conference, that is for free. It's also free for corporates to join the matchmaking, but then you have to contact me or Pontus for that. But if you want to sign up for the conference, you just go into the website swedeninnovationdays.com. And as you can see, it's 4 different themes, the different days. So if you want to join Ignite, for startups, we have you register directly in the database. And when you are in the database, we can find you and match you. In there, it's also possible to sign up to different events. If you do so, it's more easily for us to find you. We go through the signups before, and then we search throughout the database. And if you want to understand more about the startup side, please contact my colleague, Katrin. She's responsible for that. I'm responsible, as Jakob told you before, for the corporate side. I can also talk about the public sector, so you can contact me if you're from that side and wants to join. Yeah, I think that's it, Jacob. Hit me with questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sara. This is a handful of information, really, really good. And by that, I open up for questions and invite you to reflect and then ask questions to Sara. Anyone first out?
Sara, thank you so much for the presentation. I really love the ambition of this project, and especially when you're talking about the matching startups with the large corporations. Because what we do at Skåne Startup is match startup with investors. And the challenge we see when we do that type of matchmaking work is how can we scale that? Because I assume different corporations, as you mentioned, you identify their needs first, and they may have very different needs. And we have very limited resources to match them with the right startups. So I'm just wondering how do you work around that you can match as many startups with corporations as possible?
Yeah, and that is our goal, of course, to get as many meetings for them as possible. We do that in different ways. We are in an upscaling phase ourselves at the moment. So we're trying to identify how can we scale it with quality, because quality is for us very important. So that is an issue we are discussing now. I mean, in the beginning, we were only 3 people in the team, and everything was in our head and the process. But now, when we are hiring people, we can see that we need to both structure the process and how we work with each other. But we also work a lot with partners. So, for example, to get new corporates, I mean, I'm head of that, recruiting new corporates. I have a colleague that is responsible for the public sector, but then also we work with partners. So, for example, we have an event with AI Sweden later on a month, and then we work with their members. They also have large organizations as members, so we do that. So we help each other out with. We give them add-ons for their membership, and they give us add-on on our membership. That is also one thing that we do. But it's always, I mean, we are constantly, now we also been here for a while, so actually corporates is approaching us a lot also. So that is quite, I mean, now we have a reputation that it actually works. We also have a big interest on corporates from abroad that they want to join. So an organization wants to work with us. So that's really something that, I mean, we've been here from 2017. It was just a small thing in the beginning, but now as we are growing, we can see that people are approaching us also. But it's a constant work to actually get more customers for the startups. So that is something that we work with a lot. I mean, it's also try to develop it as, I mean, Anders from Alfa Laval has been part of Ignite from the beginning. And so it's always also something that we need to work on, how to make it attractive for corporates that actually are really good at this. How do we give a value for them in the long run also, and to develop Ignite to something more?
Jonas, you have a question.
I actually have 2. The first one is actually, is this only for Swedish startups? I'm thinking especially in international days, because we also have centers in Japan and South Korea.
Yes, is the short answer for that. I mean, we are financed by Vinnova regarding the startups. So the startups join Ignite for free, and it actually costs money, of course, because we do a lot of work for them, but Vinnova finance that, and they only finance Swedish startups. The corporate side pay themselves, so that is more flexible. But for Sweden Innovation Day, for example, we get paid also for the Vinnova pays for the foreign startup also. But otherwise, we are not financed for that yet. We are trying to solve that, but we have different projects. For example, we have a project with South Korea startups at the moment, but then they pay for it themselves, that we can help their startups.
To Anders, maybe, like from the corporate perspective, it would be interesting to hear what are you kind of looking for, and what are your learnings or results or rewards so far?
Yes, I mean, what we are looking for, I mean, can be a multitude of technologies, I mean, in particular, but also solutions in general. So, I mean, I think we have had the approach that we both look for companies that have something that, I mean, that they can be a supplier to us, that we can be their customers, but we're also looking for the opposite, that, I mean, we see startups that maybe are in the phase of developing a new process to solve a new problem, and where we maybe have technology which can support them, and we can try to cooperate over that. And in the end, then we would be, I mean, the startup would be our customer, so to speak. So it could be the both directions. And I mean, the value, I mean, one important value is, of course, to have the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of startups with quite a little effort, because we have this good team of Ignite that can find out and propose meetings, and it's a very efficient way with those matchmaking meetings. They're very short and intense, but it's enough time to find out if there is a reason to discuss further in a follow-up meeting. So we save a lot of time compared to being exposed to the same amount of startups by our own means.
I'm actually connecting to the discussion we had here with both Peter and Anders, maybe especially Anders, since you have been part of Ignite for a while, representing Alfa Laval. And I'm really curious on what happens after this successful matchmaking, when you have found some super interesting startups for Alfa Laval and found a mutual interest. What happens then, and what kind of challenges do you experience? Do you have a kind of a process outlined for how you have managed then the startup collaboration outside of the Søborg operation in Denmark? I mean, then focus on Sweden instead, because it's not that easy. Even if Denmark is close, it's not obvious that the Stockholm startup want to get into Søborg always, or even not a Lundish one. So can you just elaborate a little bit on how you manage that, and what experience you have so far?
Yeah, and of course, every case is different, and startups can be quite different, both from offering and their experience. I mean, they can be quite experienced people running startups as well, with a lot of exits behind them, etc. And some are fresh from university. But I mean, the first matchmaking is a good start to get in contact, and then I guess it's mainly up to ourselves to book follow-up meetings. And I mean, now of course it has been mainly over Teams, etc. But I mean, then it's more like a normal. I mean, when we work with technology development and also operations development, I mean, we have groups that work with early technologies and that are, what you could say, used to pilot and be a little bit more open to and flexible when it comes to doing pilots in smaller scale. So we have a setup, and from our side, I mean, we have had a support and a good cooperation with our legal department in order to create to create a field when it comes to NDAs, etc., that is easy to digest. I mean, making NDAs and legal agreements in steps, not trying to swallow the whole elephant by once, and not involving purchasing before we actually know if there is something to purchase. And I think a good support from Ignite side towards the startup has been that they have also put in, and maybe, I don't know if Sara would elaborate more around that, but they have also put in effort around being the legal support for the startup, so they have a counterpart that they also can. I mean, if there are two people, they do not have the capacity to meet our legals if there is some type of discussion. So do it in a open and transparent way and in smaller pieces. I think that has been the success factor from our side, to not grasp over too much in the beginning and discuss too far.
Let Jenny ask the question to Sara.
Yes, Sara, in your presentation, you talked about the cooperation should be the customers, not investors. I'm just curious, like, what is your view on the role of a cooperative venture capital in Ignite's project? And do you have any plans to involve cooperative venture capital in the project in the future?
We have had a pilot doing that. What we realized is that it worked, but it was not our core competence and our core what we should do actually. But I don't know. I mean, we can see that sometimes it will be the result after a while having a dialogue with the startup that they do invest in the startup. But we think that this is what's needed in the innovation system, that actually startup get customer. Then if they get customer, they will more easily get investors. So there's of course a collaboration with that. But we sometimes corporates wants us to scout for investment, but we say that that is not what we do. We focus on crucial business challenges that they have and scout for that. But if they want to invest later on, of course they can do that. We never interfere in what kind of collaboration they'd have. But this is not our core competence to scout for them in that case.
Then I hand over to Jonas for the next question.
Yeah, it's more like a short comment. I think this pilot thing is super interesting, and we are also working a lot with that, and on a global scale, and having a lot of learnings and also challenges around that. So if I would wish, I think that could be a great theme for another breakfast meeting, maybe.
I agree.
How to run a successful pilot.
Both for startup and corporates really want this and ask for it. So we, in a few times a year, we have workshops, lectures about piloting, because it's super interesting and everyone wants to learn about it. So I think it's a really good theme.
And it's one thing like startups and corporates, but it's also another thing going from like Western world to the Southern Hemisphere, for example.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I'd like for Ignite to teach corporates how to work with startups rather than the opposite. I think it's we that need to change. It's not startups that need to be better selling the future. We need to be better buying it. I think the problem is not the startups. The problem is us. But experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right about that, Peter. We work a lot with corporates with this. To be ready and to have an organization that can actually do something with the startups and that can actually be a customer. There's very much difference between the maturity of the corporates regarding this. It actually happens also that we say no to corporates that wants to join because they're not ready. So we help them becoming ready before they actually can meet startups. So that also the case is not, I mean, we prepare the startup and quality check them to meet the corporates, but we also do the same with the corporate because it should be efficient, effective time for both parties. It should be, if there's a meeting, it should be, it should be the potential of business.
Yeah, you put the quote of the day in the chat, Jenny, and it's Peter Tulvid. Yeah, thank you very much. It's really the core. It's something that we work heavily with in Idea and Open on a daily basis. We work in open innovation exactly for that reason, because we see that innovation creates challenges for corporates. And they are almost the same, independent of in what business you are or what you want to achieve. 85% of the challenges are the same. And we have the tools and methodologies to support and help. And I'm also working in supporting startups. And that is some of the daily insights that startups want to change, and they change very fast. But the corporates that they want to work with do not change, and sometimes they change, but after a year or something. So it's really a friction area that Ignite is tapping into, and I really acknowledge the hard work that you're doing.